Hello everyone, this is Dan. I thought I'd experiment with doing something a little bit different on my channel. I'm kind of experimenting with doing a live stream. I really just didn't feel like going through the whole editing process and everything for this video, but there's been something on my mind recently that I wanted to talk about. And that is the kind of irony or the unexpected results that you get from a lot of the feminist policies or just feminism in general. And this has been discussed before within the manosphere, within different people who produce men's content, where, especially from the perspective that feminism didn't liberate women as much as it did men, because as a result of feminist policies, men no longer really have a reason to opt in to basically committing their whole lives to necessarily being a provider or protector, because marriage and having children and all of that stuff has just become so hostile toward men in general. And I'm not here in this video to try to describe how feminism is not really about equality or how things aren't one-sided in favor of women. The evidence is pretty clear. You know, you've got the family law courts being the way they are. You've got domestic violence laws being interpreted and applied the way that they are. You know, you've got just various things that are very negative in terms of how they affect men in their dealings with women. You have the workplace things like Me Too and Listen and Believe. And you've got so many things going on. And like I say, it's been discussed before that this has helped to liberate men more than it has women. But one thing that I've been thinking about is how, in the long run, women basically they're the ones that actually have the most negative consequences as a result of feminism. And it's got me thinking about how, just in a broader context, when you do things that are bad in life, you know, life is not fair a lot of the time. And you can do bad things and get away with it, and you can do good things and be punished for it. You know, there are people that have done the so-called right thing, and maybe it actually was the right thing, you know, from a moral or you know, ethical perspective, and they ended up sacrificing their lives because of it. You know, that's gone on many times. Life is not always fair. There are a lot of things about life that's not fair. But when you screw people over repeatedly, when you act in a way that is, you know, you have no willingness to take accountability for your own choices, when you do that for a really long period of time to a lot of different people, eventually you reach a point where you're screwed. You reach a point where you end up suffering the negative consequences of your actions. Not in every case, but again, especially when this goes on repeatedly, eventually you get to that point where there's no more goodwill. There's no more people to take advantage of. And that's really what I see with feminism. You know, you have a lot of women that won't wear the feminist label, and you have a lot of women that do, today especially. But the vast majority of women have gone along, I should say, with what feminism has done to our society and to men. Most of them, they know that they benefit from feminist policies. They may know that feminism's not about equality, and that, you know, it doesn't make sense to say, well, feminism's about equality, but then women are going to have all the reproductive rights. Women have, you know, all this control over the family law courts. The family law courts exist to basically redistribute wealth from women to men. Or, I'm sorry, from men to women. When you have only men who are expected to live up to gender roles, you know, you're a good man if you sacrifice your whole life for a woman and the children that you have together. But if you ask a woman to make you a sandwich, that's sexist. That's how skewed and one-sided gender roles are today. So, I mean, it's so easy to demonstrate that feminism has not advocated for actual equality. It's advocated for advantages for women at the expense of men. And in the short run, that has benefited women in the short run. And it's very negative for men in the short run, because if you're married, you're in a really bad spot when the woman decides to divorce you. You know, a lot of men literally don't survive that. They end up, choosing to remove themselves from life. I mean, there's no good euphemism to use there. They end up killing themselves because of these situations. Or, they end up miserable in the short run because they don't know what to do once they figure out that marriage and having children is not really a good idea. It's not really a viable option for you because of these feminist laws, because of how female-centric our society is on top of that. But with feminism in particular, because that's what's led to this not even being a viable path for men anymore who want to have a good life. So in the short run, women benefit. You can become a single mom and use that kid as a meal ticket. You can use your children as a weapon against the man that fathered those children. There are so many different things that benefit women. The affirmative action programs to go to college, to go to school. So many of these things benefit women in the short run. But the thing is, if you survive this as a man, if you weather the storm, you get through, you learn about how things really are, you become red-pilled, so to speak, you get through the red pill rage, you get through the divorce, whatever it is that you're going through as a particular guy, as a particular man, and you learn to live without women, or at the very least, even if you don't totally reject the idea of relationships and whatnot, you learn to sort of restructure your life so that you're not committing to a particular woman. You're not going to have kids. You're not going to get married and do that kind of stuff. You can actually still pursue happiness without women if you're a guy. Because there, again, as many other MGTOW and men's content producers have said, feminism liberated men in that sense, because it's just not really viable for men to choose that option anymore. But the other side of that, or the second point to be made on that, I think, is that if you weather that storm and you find purpose for yourself and you get over your sexual desires and you start to think with your big head, and you don't really need women for any of that kind of stuff, and women don't do anything else in relationships for the most part anymore. Again, there's no real requirement for women to live up to any sort of gender role. Asking a woman to make you a sandwich is sexist today. But you being measured by how much money you make and how much you can provide to a woman, that's still the standard. That's still the norm. That's become more of a stringent standard lately than it has been in the past. So, once you opt out of all that as a man and you say, you know what, I'm going to pursue what benefits me, not just in a purely selfish sense, hopefully, but in the sense of whatever is actually good for my life. And that's not making a commitment or getting involved in some sort of entanglement with a woman that I can't get out of by having kids or getting married or living with a woman because of the Duluth model and because of, the in some places the common law marriage laws. Or in Ontario now, apparently just, being generous to a woman and going on vacation with her is enough to say that you're her spouse. So, with that recent case, it's like it depends on where you live, how much, how far you have to go before it's an entanglement, before it's something that can easily bring you down. And then, of course, in the workplace, you see men choosing to distance themselves from women so that they're not accused of things, and to, engage in the Mike Pence rule and all that. But more or less, if men can weather that storm and learn to make the adjustments and to not have women be the central theme of their life or trying to find a relationship, if you can accomplish that, then really you have a better chance at happiness, or at least as good of a chance at happiness, by distancing yourself from those expectations. But the other side of this is, ultimately, what do women end up with? Most women want to have children. They do. I mean, you can argue that and say, oh, no, that's sexist, but most women want to have children, and they want to have children with a man that, even if they don't like that guy, at least provides them some stability. Becoming a single mom and basically wedding the state, having the state as your husband, doesn't really accomplish that. And it definitely doesn't make it to where you have someone to help you through everything in life. You know, the way that most women, I'm not saying that women necessarily want a man to help them with everything, because they do have this strong, independent woman nonsense a lot of the time. But, you know, they want a man to be there for them, to help them raise their kids, at the very least. And where has feminism left women when it comes to all that? Hey, Race the Veil. I see you're asking me what I think about the declining birth rates in America. Well, there's a lot that you could say about that. Depends on your perspective. For me, it's just, this society is already kind of broken, so that's not surprising that you have these declining birth rates. I guess my take on it is that there's not a whole lot we can do about it if we keep going down the direction that we're going. Because women are going to find it more difficult, as I'm saying here, to really find someone that wants to have kids with them. So, you know, it's kind of, our society is really going in the wrong direction, and I think the declining birth rates are a part of that. But until we fix the sort of underlying problems and give people an incentive to have children again, it's just going to continue to get worse. And what our leaders will most likely do is, you know, they'll just increase immigration laws, or, you know, they'll make it easier to have immigrants come in. And, you know, it's basically, you know, it's not really a conspiracy, but it's just whatever they can use to basically replace Western society with a society where people don't have rights and stuff anymore. So, you know, instead of really solving the problem, they're just going to import more people from different places. And, you know, people are just going to double down on feminism. One other point that I wanted to make is, and this really isn't that super important, I guess, but my take on feminism as a movement is that we basically live in a post-feminist society. So feminism has won, more or less. And anything that we do now is basically a response to feminism, if that makes sense. You know, this idea of fighting feminism or trying to undo feminism, it's just not going to work that way. At least not in this society. So I think it's going to take a lot. But, you know, and I don't see anything really being reversed in regard to what the dominant gender ideology is. But as a result of feminism, going back to kind of the main topic like I say, I've been thinking about for a while now, the end result is that women, and you can see this with these surveys that ask people whether they're happy or not, men are happier over time, or have become happier over time, and women have become more miserable. And a big part of that is because of feminism. You know, the average woman out there let feminism happen. The average women out there, even the women that didn't identify as feminists, didn't talk about how, you know, they don't need men, and men are all, you know, to blame for everything, and this patriarchy keeps oppressing women and all this nonsense. A lot of women didn't come out and voice those opinions, and aren't necessarily voicing those opinions now, especially since men have basically had enough of that to a large degree, or to a growing degree. But a lot of these women just let this happen. They allowed feminism to become the dominant gender ideology. They allowed feminism to make things more and more unfair for men, and they just took advantage of these government programs for single moms. They just took advantage of, you know, and it's not just for single moms, but, you know, of to go to college, these affirmative action programs that women take advantage of. It's just they took advantage of this whole mentality that, oh, we're for equality, but then give us what the top 10% of men have, or give us these special laws and privileges over reproduction and domestic violence and all that. It's let's just go ahead and take advantage of what feminism gives us on top of some of the advantages we had in traditional society as well. And let's just, we don't have to come out and say that we're feminists. We'll just basically benefit from this, in case we want to get divorced, or in case, we want to be able to go to school and get these scholarships, or in case we want to basically make an accusation against a man at work. Most women have just stood by and condoned all this. And there have been a few women, of course, especially now, or within the last 10 years, probably for a while, there's been some women that have come out and said, I'm actually against feminism, and some of them aren't really. They just don't support the results of third and fourth wave feminism. So you'll see some of these women say things like, oh, I'm all for women being given the right to vote and having abortion rights, while men have no reproductive rights at all, basically, but I don't think we should be mean to men, so I'm anti-feminist, where really they're not anti-feminist. But then you have some women that are against the core of feminism. They'll go all the way back and say women should not have just been given the right to vote. Women shouldn't have abortion rights, and men have no right to paternal surrender whatsoever. No abortion right, or no reproductive rights at all. You see this sort of you see occasionally women that will actually come out and say that, but it's like 1 out of 100 women. And I think the most stark example now in the last year or two is with the Me Too movement, where you see these women going out and marching on the Capitol, marching on Washington. I make it sound like it's a military campaign by putting it that way. They walked around the streets of Washington with hats that depict their genitalia and demand all these rights that they already have, or special privileges that it's like men have no equivalent to that. How dare you even consider any sort of restrictions on abortion, or whatever it is that they want. We just want women to have these elevated positions of society, and we just want women to control men. But you see that kind of thing from these most radical feminist women. And then Me Too, and the Kavanaugh hearings. I don't want to get political really with what I'm talking about in this video, but you see all these kinds of responses from your hardcore radical feminist women. Where are the women coming out and saying, no, this is bullshit, this is based on nothing, women already have all these special privileges and advantages that men don't have in society, why are you marching on the Capitol and saying you need more of this? Where are the women coming out and saying that? And they do exist, but they're extremely rare. Where are the women coming out and having some sort of counter march and saying, no, we don't support any of this stuff. We want actual equality under the law. We want men to be treated well in this society, and we don't support any of this. They don't exist. There was no counter march to these women's marches. And even men that are totally unaware of the manosphere, the men's rights movement, MGTOW, they're going to see this. They're going to see, oh, women are coming out and saying they need even more rights and privileges, but where are the women saying they don't need this? And who is it that is speaking up for women collectively? It's the feminists. It has been for 100 years, the feminists that are speaking on behalf of women for the most part. And for the women that are actually coming out and trying to speak against this, in a way, you're the only women that I have any sort of sympathy for at all. Because at least, you wish that things were different and better between men and women today, and that men actually got something out of marriage and having children, and the whole process that men are expected to go through, but have no advantage in doing so. But for all the other women, they have condoned all this stuff. They have condoned from getting the right to vote, based on nothing, while boys who were 18 to 20 years old could still get drafted and potentially die in battle and not even have the right to vote and not even have representation. The women that supported that all the way from then until now, where you see Me Too and Listen and Believe, and you're supposed to mentor her, even though she can make a false accusation against you if you meet her alone. But it's all your fault anyways, the man, because the patriarchy's bad. That's what has become the norm. I guess that's the dominant gender ideology. And ultimately, there's just no reason for men to participate at that level. Whether you're MGTOW or not, that's just not a healthy environment, obviously, to have kids in. And the whole point of what I'm saying, again, is women have condoned this for so many decades now, and now men are finding happiness outside of women. Men are moving on from this idea of committing to a particular woman or having a family. Men are figuring out, a lot of men haven't figured this out, but the men that are more intelligent, the men that, have respect for themselves and want a good life for themselves and don't just want to be provider drones, these men are deciding, you know what, I'm not interested in this sort of path anymore. It's not a viable path. It's not something that's going to lead to a positive outcome for me. More and more men are figuring this out, and they're finding happiness outside of that traditional, conventional model. And women who want families, who want to have children, who, they may, they believe, a lot of them, because of feminism, that they should go out and have a career and all that, but a lot of them end up working dead-end jobs. That has turned around to make women miserable as well, because these women aren't going to be, some of them can compete and do very well and make six figures or more, but a lot of them are just going to be in really bad working conditions, and again, I don't feel sorry for the majority of women. I'm just being honest. Like, a lot of them are not going to be satisfied with their careers. And so what ends up happening is that women are more miserable as a result of feminism, and men are happier as a result of feminism more or less making it to where they had to find another source for happiness. But men can adapt to that. Women, if you're a woman, typically most women, they want to have families, and even for the ones who don't, they're not going to find that much satisfaction drudging away trying to compete with men. And again, the whole point of what I'm saying in this video, the main sort of thesis is, this is what happens when you treat people, a certain group of people, like crap in your society, or even at the individual level, when you treat everyone around you poorly and you exploit people that wanted to have a connection with you or wanted to get along well with you, wanted to have a reciprocal relationship with you, and you just say, oh, I'm just going to use, in this case, men. I'm just going to take advantage of men and blame men for all my problems and all that. Congratulations, you're in your 40s. It's either too late for you to have kids, or you're a single mom, or you're married to someone that you don't respect, and maybe you actually had kids with somebody else and he doesn't even know. There's a variety of there's a lot of variations that this can take. And I'm not saying it's impossible for a woman to get lucky and find happiness with a particular guy. But ultimately, that is much harder for women to do now because of feminism. Women went along with this idea that, you can find satisfaction in what men do. Just do what men do. Play the field, have sex with a bunch of different men. Don't commit, don't settle. And then they end up basically not meeting the main goal that most women want to achieve, which is satisfaction through your relationship, satisfaction through your family. A lot of them don't have a family at all, or they buy into, like I say, the idea of, I'll just be a single mom and do it all myself because I don't need no man. And then they end up basically being miserable. They end up basically just being the ones that lose the most because of feminism. And like I say, in the short run, they can use the advantages given to them by feminism basically as a tool or as a weapon in some cases against men. But sooner or later, women, I think, have to come to the realization that that doesn't help them meet their life goals. That doesn't really give them satisfaction. That doesn't give them a stable relationship. That doesn't give them a family. That doesn't give them a job that they're satisfied with without working themselves, to the point that I'm not saying women necessarily work as hard as men in many cases, because again, feminism has made it to where, they're equal, but they're equal in a way that's unequal. But still, a lot of them find no satisfaction, working in an environment where, they don't make that much money, and they're trying to find a man that makes more than them, but because women are part of the labor force now, that's lowered wages for everybody, and hypergamy kind of has no place to go with all that. So, more and more women are going to suffer the long-term negative consequences of feminism, and it's because they went along with it. It's because most of them condoned it, and it's because, or even, for the women that didn't condone it and actually speak out against feminism, like I say, women as a whole have decided that they wanted to go full feminism, that they wanted to create this environment, create this scenario where there is very little positive in the long run for them. And men don't feel bad for them. Men don't care. Like, men have moved on from this. Or even for the guys that have continued to be part of the so-called plantation, and they still want to get married, and they have no sort of vision outside of getting married and listening to whatever a woman tells them to do for their lives. Even those women, even those men, they're not really attractive to women. Like, they're not going to find satisfaction in a relationship with a guy that just does whatever they want them to do. So the men that a lot of these women would want to be with and have kids with, they're just not doing that in large numbers today. And so, that's something I've been thinking about. And again, I think the broader context of this, and I know I'm rambling on, but the broader context of this is, this happens a lot in life. If you'll notice this pattern at different levels of analysis, with different people, this happens in many cases where someone will use other people and steal and lie and do bad things, and they'll seem to get away with it. But if they don't change what they do, and they don't start to learn from those things and say, I need to actually take accountability for myself and try to be a better person in this, eventually they end up in jail, or they end up, at the very least being hated by a lot of people. And they're going to be in a situation where they could use help, and no one wants to give them that help because they were a scumbag, because they chose to treat other people that way. It happens at that level, and it happens, at the macro level, like with the case with feminism, where when you basically oppress men for decades, and you tell men that they're all bad and they have this toxic masculinity and all men are abusers, and you're just supposed to listen and believe when a woman makes an accusation against a man. Men don't deserve the right to speak. You can't speak about women's issues. You can't speak about, in your own defense against, what this woman is accusing you of, which you can in a court of law in many places still. But in terms of the court of public opinion, it's just a woman says something and you're guilty. Well, men have adapted to that. Men are adapting more and more, especially over the long run. Women, you're not going to adapt to not having a family very well. You're not going to adapt to basically having to try to meet the male standard, although in many cases women still aren't expected to really meet the male standard. But you're going to have to try to live life the way that men do now, and you're not going to have that companionship. You're not going to have those children, or if you do, you're going to have to raise them yourself, and they're probably going to be messed up because you didn't have that masculine figure helping you do that. And then, all the things that men do for women in relationships, you're not going to have that provider. The state is going to be your provider, and good luck with that. The state's not going to keep you warm at night. And what most women will do is they'll continue to blame men, or they'll continue to, act as if something good will happen to them eventually. But most of them are so entitled, and the hypergamy is so out of control today that they're not going to find that. And so in the long run, it's women that actually suffer the negative consequences of feminism. I've been thinking more and more about that. How in the short run, men have a lot to get through. Men have to figure out how to kind of carve a different path. For MGTOW, it's learning how to go your own way. But even for men that don't completely choose that option, a lot of them are still going to say, nah, I don't need to have kids. I'm not going to make this commitment. Even men that, aren't completely aware of what's going on, they're still going to tend toward that direction more and more if they're rational. And so in the short run, men have a lot to overcome with their own biology, with societal expectations, with being told lies about the overall sort of situation between men and women today. But once men overcome that, if they can, things get better. For women, things get worse, and there is no positive outcome. Even for, like I say, it really doesn't even matter if you're truly an anti-feminist woman. Women have been condoning feminism for so long that it's become, and has been for many decades, the dominant gender ideology. And the end result is that men are just going to say, we don't need this. Even if you're anti-feminist, we still don't need to make that level of commitment because there's no benefit. And so, to the man, there's no benefit. And so a lot of these women are going to be single moms. They're not going to find a stable man in their lives. A lot of these women are not going to have kids at all. A lot of these women are going to end up divorced, or maybe, not married ever. And they're going to try to find satisfaction in what they've been told by feminism was supposed to satisfy them. The same things that satisfy the top 10% of men, basically. But they're going to find that those things aren't really there. And that when they are, they're still not satisfying for them. And yeah, that's... Again, I kind of probably should make an actual standalone video on this topic where my thoughts are a little bit more organized. But I kind of just wanted to express this now while I've been thinking about it a lot. I might do more videos like this in the future. I don't know. Depends on what kind of response I get or whether people like it or not. But, I really think, life is not fair. To wrap things up, life is not fair a lot of the time. But when you screw people over repeatedly, when you do bad things repeatedly, eventually it catches up with you. And that's kind of where I think we're at with women in feminism now. Not every woman's a bad person, that's not what I'm saying. But women as a whole supported feminism. They condoned, at the very least, feminist practices. They allowed men to get screwed over in the family law courts without opposing that. They allowed men to, basically have no reproductive rights, to the point where if you and a woman have, if she gets pregnant with your child, she can either sue you for 18 years of child support, or she can literally have that fetus aborted before it's born. Women stood by and allowed men to have any sort of say over that completely taken away. Women as a whole stood by and allowed feminism to do what it did. And now women are the ones that are facing the negative effects of that more, and especially in the long run, more than men are. Men are able to recover from that if they can get over the idea of committing to a woman or only measuring yourself by, how women perceive you. Women, you're just going to be alone. And not in every case. And like I say, for the women that have been against feminism and actually truly are against all forms of feminism, it sucks, but you're not going to have that most likely unless you find one guy that, while you're still young, that you can build that with. But most men aren't going to be as interested in that. It's going to be at the very least a lot more difficult for you to find happiness through having a family, through having stability in your life, that a decent man can bring into your life under other circumstances, who could have done that. Women are going to face the most long-term negative consequences of feminism. And like I say, they're not necessarily going to realize this. They're not going to become red-pilled, so to speak, to all this. They're just going to blame men. They're just going to say, oh, we need more rights and privileges. Oh, we can do anything a man can do. We don't need men. But even for your average woman that's not that militant about it, that's not identifying as a feminist, supposedly, they're still going to sit back and let a lot of what's going on happen, because the path that they're on can't really be altered after a certain point, and a lot of them are just not going to be happy. Not saying this is universal, but this is a result of feminism. This is a result of everything that women allowed to happen through feminism coming full circle and being something that really is not good for women in the long run, but that men can move beyond in many cases. So let me know what you guys think about that. Am I wrong about this? Do men still suffer the worst of consequences of feminism? Or is it a case of women are going to pretty much get what they've asked for with this? They're going to get men not really being as interested in them other than for sex. If they are, they're going to get, being alone. They're strong and independent and don't need men. Okay, we hear that. We're not going to help you now. We're not going to be supportive of you now, because the state is basically your husband at this point. Are women going to suffer the more negative consequences of this? And I think they are. I think it's become apparent. And hey, Vincent, I've been rambling on for almost 40 minutes now, but like I say, this is what happens when you condone evil. This is what happens when you go along with something that damages other people for no good reason. This is what happens when you basically support, taking advantage of and exploiting people. Eventually it comes back on you if you keep doing it for long enough. Like I say, life is still not fair in many cases, but if you keep doing this kind of stuff for long enough, you eventually run out of people to exploit. And in the case of feminism, you eventually run out of men that are willing to be a part of that, except for the men that you don't really want to necessarily be with anyway, because they can't stand up for themselves in that kind of way. So, like I say, I might make more videos about this in the future. And I might make more streams like this, because even though I'm rambling more and there's really little opportunity to edit anything, it's definitely easier to make than preparing a full video. But like I say, let me know what you guys think about this. It seems to me like this is one of the themes in life, where while life isn't fair, if you do things like try to exploit the opposite sex, yeah, I'm glad, Vincent, I'm glad that you got something out of it, my, long ramble on this. But sure, go ahead and share it if you'd like to. And anybody else that finds this to be worthwhile, like the video and share it if you want. I want to make content more often, and I think one of the ways that I can go about that is by doing these live streams sometimes, along with sort of standard standalone videos that I upload as well. But like I say, let me know what you guys think of this topic. At the surface level, it's just like you would expect men to be the ones to lose out because of feminism. Even when you understand what feminism really is, that it's not about equality, you would think, man, men are the ones suffering. And in the short run, that's true. But in the long run, I think women are the ones that are really going to have the sort of blowback. They're the ones that are really going to have the long-term negative outcomes, where they can't meet a lot of their life goals because of what men are choosing to do as a result of feminism. And rightfully so. That's the way it should be as a result of how things have developed over the last several decades. You know, women allowed feminism to become what it's become, and I think that they're the ones that are going to suffer the most negative consequences as a result. So thank you for watching the video, for anybody that sees this later, and have a good day. And like I say, I might make more videos like this in the future. And thanks for checking out this channel.